to have this celebration. It's great to have you all here, whether from Maine or otherwise, to welcome back and to honor a true legend in Nordic skiing and in the Olympic movement. It's certainly appropriate that we're here in the Olympic Museum in Lake Placid, because there's probably no one living in our country, at least, maybe worldwide, who's had a longer and greater Olympic history and impact than Chummy has. And although we're surrounded by artifacts and pictures and medals and so on, to be in the presence of someone who's actually created history and lived the Olympic history is truly inspiring, and it's so great to have Chummy back in Lake Placid. You know, it strikes me in our society today that when someone achieves a certain level of significance and notoriety in their life, in their field, they often are known by one name. And you know, in the world of entertainment, everybody knows who Cher is, and if you're a golfer, everybody knows who Tiger is. Well, I don't care if you're in Anchorage, Alaska, or Sun Valley, Idaho, or Boulder, Colorado, or Park City, or Telemark, or Biwabic, or Jackson, New Hampshire, or Lake Placid, or Maine. Everybody knows the one name associated with Nordic skiing, and that's Chummy. Everybody has a story about Chummy. Everybody has an experience with Chummy. And the individual, the man who is known by that name, is revered and cherished by all of us who've been impacted by him for over 8 decades of dedication to the Nordic world and the Olympic movement. You know, Chummy's accomplishments and history are well known. They're documented in the Maine Ski Museum, the U.S. Ski and Snowboard Hall of Fame. And again, as I said, we only have an hour, so I wasn't able to list everything, but just the highlights. As many of you know, Chummy was a member of the famed historic 10th Mountain Division in World War II. And he's been one of those folks, the main developer of Black Mountain in Rumford. He was a member of the U.S. ski team from 47 to 54 and a member of the 48 and 52 Olympic teams. He's been a lifelong member, board member, and impetus behind the historic Chisholm Ski Club in Rumford. Of course, in the Olympic world, after competing, we know in 1960 he was selected to design and create and build the courses and for the 60 games, and he'd go back and forth between Maine and California, where he was chief of course and chief of race for the 60 Olympics. Near and dear to our heart, in '80 he came to help us take the existing facility at Mount Van Hovenberg, which was about 18 to 20K at that time, and with Tony Goodwin, our good friend over here to my left, and Vern Lamb and Al Merrill, they designed and built out the entire 50K Olympic facility that was used here in '80 and is still used today, and has been known for being among the best Olympic courses ever designed. In addition to that, of course, he's been an organizer, a chief of competition, and the inspiration behind countless U.S. cross-country nationals, JO competitions and championship, NCAA championships, EISA carnivals in Rumford. But Chummy's impact goes far beyond just being on committees or organizing events. It's what he's done as an individual for the sport and for us. His connection to Lake Placid actually goes well before the 1980 games. As many of you may know, in 1951, the World Nordic Championships were scheduled to take place in Lake Placid. And maybe as a precursor to the 80 games, there was no snow. And they were at the point of going to cancel that event when Chummy came forward and said, let's move it to Rumford. And after some convincing and cajoling, the organizing committee agreed to move to Rumford 1 week before the event was to occur. And so Chummy, who was still on the ski team, was a competitor in the 1951 World Nordic Championships. But he also was head of the organizing committee. He laid out the courses, and he skied the courses, and he competed. I have a great story that Dave Newton, who's a friend of mine, a cross-country volunteer for decades, he lives in Seattle, told me that on the day of the 50K, he, at that time, he grew up in Auburn, Maine, and was a student at the University of Maine, and he came to Rumford to watch the 1951 World Nordic Championships, and he's along the course of the 50K with one of Chummy's brothers, and he doesn't remember who at this point. It's not really that important. But the morning of the 50K, Chummy had gone out, packed the course, set the trail, marked the course, and then competed in the 50K. And Chummy skis by at one point, and Dave Newton is there with one of Chummy's brothers, and throughout all this activity, he hadn't had a chance to eat anything. And so he's yelling at the Broomhall family and Dave Newton to get him something to eat. And unfortunately, among all of them, the most they could come up with is a pack of gum. And so he skied away with the pack of gum, hoping to get a little sugar kick or whatever. Probably one of the most famous things that Chummy did in 1960 in those games, as you may know, he developed the first mechanized grooming equipment. Up until 1960, all grooming was done by foot packing courses and skiing the courses in. Well, the squaw trails and the weather posed considerable challenges because during the day, of course, with the hot sun, the snow would get soft and mushy, but then in the evening it would freeze very hard, and that posed a real challenge. So with some friends in New Hampshire and his background having grown up on a farm with farm implements, Chummy designed, after several attempts, this machine that would go along the course and grind up that frozen snow every morning. That was the advent worldwide of mechanized grooming, and he did that in 1960. In 1980, as I said, with Tony and working there, and Vern Lamb and Al Merrill, they came here and built out this wonderful 50K system of trails. And even though there's not I don't think a lot about that in this museum, and probably gets lost in the history of the Lake Placid games with the hockey game and Eric Heidner and so on. In 1980 in Lake Placid, the most of all of us here, John Farah, who used to run the programs for the U.S. ski team, the Nordic programs, tells me a story of 5 to 7 years ago of meeting with Chummy. In the U.S. ski team hierarchy, we made a decision that to have national championships at your venue, you had to be FIS homologated. And Rumford wasn't, Lake Placid wasn't, most of the places weren't. And John went up to meet with Chummy, and they wanted in Rumford the 2010-2011 championships there. And John had to deliver the news to Chummy that they couldn't have the races unless they became FIS homologated. And he recalls walking the courses with Chummy, and this was maybe 7 years ago, and Chummy perhaps giving some nod to the challenge of walking all those courses. He was walking the entire day with his old alpine poles. But they got to the end of the day, and John said, "Chummy, there's a lot of work to be done here in Rumford for the races to come back." And Chummy looked at John and said, "We'll do what's necessary to have our courses homologated." And they were brought up to spec, and they were brought up beyond spec, and they're tremendous. And John tells me of the pleasure he had to deliver to Chummy the news that they could have the 2010-2011 national championships, that Rumford had the best courses in the country. And he said that it was so moving that a tear came down Chummy's cheeks, because Rumford was still in the forefront of skiing. I don't know how many of you have had the opportunity to go to Rumford for races. I've been there many times as a TD, as a team leader for the U.S. ski team, for Eastern teams, representative of FIS and so on. But when you go to Rumford, you are amazed by this cadre of volunteers, usually dressed in reds. They call them the red coats. And in fact, I found, this is one of my red coats. This is from the 1992 JOs. And this group of volunteers goes about their job professionally and happily, and they do such a great job. And I've talked to a lot of them, usually in the volunteer feeding building. And by the way, the food in Rumford for the volunteers is the best in the country. It is hot food, it is great food, it is plentiful food, and it's wonderful. But to a person, when you ask them, well, why do you do this? Why do you come out so many times during the season? Why do you work so hard in the weather? To a person, they say, we do it for Chummy. And that's, there's no ego involved. They don't want to let Chummy down. And so they do that. I mean, it helps that half the people are Broomhalls, but it's amazing. Another friend of mine who used to run the Nordic programs and now is the vice president for sport for U.S. ski team, Luke Bodensteiner, tells a story to me about just a few years ago when the Nationals came back to Rumford in 10 or 11. They had the day of spring. Sprinting in cross-country skiing is a new event, and it's a great event, but it is a long day of events. It starts at 9 in the morning, it goes till 4 in the afternoon, there's no break. As Margaret knows, when the championships are here in the East, there's about 600 competitors, and everybody skis. And there's heats, and there's advancement, and there's consolation, there's B finals, A finals, and so on. And Luke said that the day they were there for the sprints most recently was a real cold day. The weather was just barely legal. The temperature, maybe 1 degree to the good to have the races. The coaches complained, the athletes complained, the FIS people complained, everybody complained. Luke, who's a strapping former skier, ski team guy, said every chance he got, he'd go into that volunteer tent to get warm. But not once, from 9 o'clock in the morning till 4:30 in the afternoon when they had the podium event, not once did Chummy leave the stadium and go in to get warm. And Luke said at the end of the day, he said, Chummy, how did you do it? I just said, he said, well, the cold was a challenge, but we got through it. In 1999, I was very fortunate to be selected as one of the handful of people whose job was to select and design and build the Olympic Nordic facilities in Park City in Soldier Hollow for the 2002 games. And John Alberg, the guy who I work for, said to me that it's important that we do it right, that the whole world is going to be watching America, and particularly the Scandinavians were sure that we couldn't do it, that we would fall flat on our face. And he said, we've got to do this right. And he said, how should we go about it? And they said, John, we've got to go to Rumford and talk to Chummy. He's did 60, he did 80, and we're going to go and we're going to talk to Chummy. So we finagled. John was the TD in 1999 for U.S. Nationals. I was the assistant TD. And we went there and we realized that if we kept our eyes open, kept our ears open and our mouths shut, and just learned from Chummy, we would be fine. And much of what we did at Soldier Hollow in 2002 was directly from learning from Chummy. And so his history, his involvement continued. John asked me after we left Rumford, he said, he was so impressed, he said, we need to have Chummy involved in 2002 for the Olympics. And he said, you know him the best. I want you to call Chummy and invite him to be involved, to come out. We want to honor him at Soldier Hollow. So one night I called from my house to Maine and got Chummy on the phone. And maybe it was a bad connection. Maybe I didn't express myself well. But I said, Chummy, we'd like you to be involved in 2002. Can you come out? And apparently the message got a little mixed because Chummy thought I was asking him to take over the event, to be the chief of competition. And there was a little pause on the phone, and he said, well, Ed, in 2002, I'll be 82 years old. And he said, I probably can't do it all like I did in 60 and 80, but if you could find me a couple good men, I can run your Olympic Games. And he was right, he could have. And we did have him out, and we did put him in a place of honor, and it was great. I think what has impressed me most over the years is whether it's the Olympics, U.S. National Championships, or some junior Olympic qualifier or a high school race in Rumford, Chummy treats every one of those races, every one of those skiers, with the same respect, passion, and commitment that he did with the Olympic Games. And so if it's a little JO kid or a U.S. ski team member or an international skier, they get the same benefit of his expertise, his passion. And so it's such an honor as someone who has considered Chummy a friend, a mentor, a teacher for so many years, to welcome him back to Lake Placid, to have everybody here to honor him. Denny and I, when we were going through a list, there are not a lot of people left around, but there's some good ones left. I can remember Brian Bliss's good friend, Doug Drum, used to make me, we used to have these blue Ford cars. During the week, I got to drive the Ford car, one of the station wagons, in my job for the Olympic Committee in '80, but I had to give it to Chummy and Al Merrill when they'd come into town on the weekend. That was my first connection with Chummy, back handing off the keys to the Ford car. But Chummy, it's so great to have you here. You look wonderful, and on behalf of Lake Placid, the Olympic Authority, and the entire Nordic world, thank you for everything you've done. We look forward to many more years, and it's so great to have your family here, your friends here, and it's great to have you back in Lake Placid. Thanks so much.
So Chummy doesn't have to correct Ed. I was only in charge of the wax trailers and the porta potties.
There we go.
Just to make that clear.
Yeah. All right, Chummy says a few words?
Absolutely.
Anyway, thank all of you for coming, and thank Ed. I've known Ed for many, many years, and he's done a lot for the sport too. As far as I'm concerned, skiing has given me the biggest enjoyment in my life, and I enjoyed every minute of it. I got involved with a lot of competitions and kids. I was head of the junior program in Rumford for 30 years, and I'm proud to say that at least 50 kids from that area were on national junior teams, Olympic teams, NCAA teams, and but that's not what I'm so proud of these kids. I'm proud of them for what they did with their lives afterwards, and that's the pay I got. What they did with their lives afterwards. I don't know what else to say, but thank you very much. But I have one other thing I have to say, and that's a story in itself. And I did all this because of the young lady that married me. I hit the jackpot. And we were married for 62 years, 8 months and 5 days when I lost it. And she joined me in everything. I spent, as I've told some people here, I worked on my job 22 hours a week during the winter time and skiing the rest of the week, including weekends where I chased all over New England and Lake Placid with kids trying to make teams. And it's the biggest enjoyment I have had in life. And I'm grateful for all of it. And thank you for all coming. And, well, like I was saying today, that fella upstairs and that fella downstairs can't make up their mind which one wants me. So they're just keeping me around. But I've always said all my life that the name of the game in life was keep moving. And I still believe in that theory. And appreciate you coming in this honor. Thank you very much.